Why did the room go silent the moment she walked in, before anyone even knew her name? Cassandra Reeves felt it before she saw it, the way conversation thinned, the way people suddenly remembered paperwork, coffee, anything that pulled their eyes away. She had learned not to react. Silence was safer than curiosity. Invisibility was survival. The Colorado air cut her lungs as she crossed the parade ground before sunrise. Whitmore Air Force Base was waking the way it always did, slow, precise, confident. F-22s slept under floodlights like restrained predators. Ground crews moved with practiced rhythm. Everything looked controlled. She was not. Her uniform carried no patches, no unit crest, no visible story, just fabric, regulation boots, and auburn hair pulled tight into a bun that revealed nothing of the discipline behind it. To most people, she was forgettable by design, a junior technician, a background presence. That anonymity had kept her alive. The order had arrived the night before, formal, cold, summoning her to the base commander's office at 600, no explanation, no courtesy note, just authority. She'd read it 3 times. General Harrison Kellerman did not summon people casually. As she approached headquarters, Cassandra slowed her stride, forcing herself to look uncertain, less confident, less alert. She fumbled slightly with her ID at the checkpoint, exactly as someone unfamiliar with command spaces would. It was exhausting, pretending not to see what she saw, pretending not to hear patterns in radio chatter, pretending not to understand systems she had mapped down to the frequency. 18 months of pretending to be smaller than she was. The building loomed ahead, concrete and glass, reflecting a sky that hadn't decided whether it wanted to be day yet. Cassandra breathed once, steady, controlled. She stepped inside. General Kellerman stood behind his desk like a monument carved from discipline. Tall, rigid, certain. His office was a shrine to authority, photographs, flags, challenge coins aligned with geometric obsession. He had never doubted his understanding of order. He didn't offer her a seat. He studied her like a flaw. "Lieutenant Reeves," he said, "do you know why you're here?" "No, sir." Her voice was calm, too calm in his opinion. He circled her slowly, eyes sharp, measuring. "You've been here 18 months. No awards, no reprimands, no commendations. You exist in the margins." "I focus on my duties, sir." That was the wrong answer. He stopped behind her. "Your attitude during my inspection 3 days ago was noted." She remembered the server room, his questions, her precise answers. Her mistake had been competence. "You spoke as if you were above explanation," he continued, "as if respect were optional." "I meant no disrespect, sir." He exhaled through his nose. A decision had already been made. "Military standards are not suggestions," he said, opening a drawer. "They are enforced." The scissors came out slowly, deliberately. Cassandra understood then. Not fear, recognition. This was not discipline. This was punishment dressed as authority. "Turn around." She complied. The first cut sounded louder than it should have. Hair fell to the floor, soft against polished linoleum. She didn't flinch. Her breathing stayed even. Inside, she retreated into the place training had built, a place where pain was information, not emotion. "You think intelligence makes you special," he said as he cut again. "It doesn't, obedience does." More hair fell. She stared out the window at the flight line, at machines utterly dependent on invisible systems she could dismantle without touching them. Snip, snip. This wasn't about grooming. It was about humiliation. Then the blade caught. A sharp pull, heat, blood. Her head shifted instinctively, barely an inch. His hand grabbed her shoulder to force her still. Her body responded before her mind could stop it. A rotation, a step, balance reversed. The scissors fell. Silence slammed into the room. Kellerman stared at her like the world had tilted. "I apologize, sir," Cassandra said evenly. "I lost my balance." He reached for the phone. It chimed first. A secure tone, rare, urgent. His face drained as he read the display. "Lieutenant," he snapped, "you're dismissed." She saluted, turned, left. Her hair was ruined, her scalp burned, and something inside her, something carefully contained for 18 months, had cracked. The corridors watched her pass. People didn't stare, they pretended not to see, but avoidance spoke louder than shock. She was marked now. Back in the communications bay, her supervisor hesitated when he saw her. "Reeves, what happened?" "Corrective action." He didn't push. No one ever did when command had already spoken. She sat at her terminal, logged in. But her hands moved differently now. Faster, deeper. The base hummed around her, unaware. Then the systems began to fail. At first it was small, GPS drift, static, latency, the kind of problems networks learn to hide. Then radar screens went blank. Pilots called in confusion. Navigation didn't make sense. Backup systems failed in sequence, like dominoes pushed by an invisible hand. In the tower, panic grew teeth. In command, silence became terror. In the communications bay, Cassandra watched the network unravel, not maliciously, not chaotically, but surgically. Each failure revealed a truth she had documented quietly for months. Her supervisor watched in horror. "Reeves, are you doing this?" She didn't look at him. "I'm showing you what was always here." "What do you want?" he whispered. She paused finally. "I want them to understand," she said softly. "That respect doesn't come from scissors." Above them, fighters burned fuel with nowhere to land. In his office, General Kellerman listened as truths he didn't know existed dismantled his career in real time. Voices from compartments above his clearance explained who Cassandra Reeves actually was. Commander, Space Force, Strategic Intelligence. Not a technician. An asset. And he had broken her conditioning. When the systems came back online instantly, cleanly, the base fell silent, not because it was ordered to, because everyone understood. Cassandra stood alone in the bay, hair uneven, eyes steady. She restored everything. She always could. Later, when investigators asked why she stopped before it went too far, she gave no dramatic answer. "I remembered who would pay the price." No medal followed, no public apology, just quiet reassignment and sealed records. But Whitmore never forgot. And neither did she. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did no one look her in the eyes after that morning, like they were afraid the silence itself might break? Cassandra felt it the moment she stepped back into the communications bay. The air hadn't changed, but the people had. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chairs scraped back just a little too fast. Even the hum of servers felt louder, like it was trying to fill a void no one wanted to acknowledge. Her reflection stared back at her from a dark monitor, uneven hair, dried blood near her scalp, eyes too calm for someone who had just been publicly broken. She looked like discipline had passed through her. In reality, something else had woken up. For 18 months she had lived inside limits, artificial ones. She had learned how to swallow reactions, how to dull instincts, how to let arrogance roll off her like rain. She had practiced being ignored so well that it had become second nature. Until scissors touched her skin. She sat down slowly, grounding herself in routine. Boot placement, chair height, terminal angle, muscle memory was a lifeline. The login screen appeared, familiar and deceptively harmless. Her fingers hovered. This was the moment training warned about. Psychological fracture points, when restraint becomes optional, when power feels justified. She closed her eyes for half a second. Then she logged in. Around her, Whitmore continued its morning rhythm. Maintenance crews worked, aircraft fueled, briefings happened. The base assumed continuity because continuity had always been there. No one questioned the invisible. Cassandra did. She began lightly at first. Passive observation, traffic analysis, signal integrity checks, nothing that would trip alarms. The systems responded like they always did, obedient, flawed, overconfident. Her supervisor, Staff Sergeant Torres, lingered nearby longer than usual. He didn't like what he was seeing, though he didn't yet understand it. "You sure you're okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm functional," she replied. It wasn't a lie. Data unfolded across her screen. Roots, dependencies, assumptions. The architecture she had spent months memorizing now revealed itself in full clarity. It wasn't anger guiding her hands. It was precision and something colder. At 13:47 hours, the base hiccuped. Just once. GPS drifted by fractions too small for pilots to notice. Yet, radar latency increased by milliseconds. Systems compensated automatically. That's what they were designed to do. But compensation is not correction. She nudged again. In the control tower, screens flickered. Controllers frowned. They checked connections, blamed software updates. Someone made a joke to cut the tension. Then the radar went black. "Say again," a pilot's voice crackled over open comms. "Tower, confirm position." Static answered. The room around Cassandra reacted before anyone connected the dots. Phones rang. Voices rose. Torres turned sharply toward her screen, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Listening," she said. She could hear it now, the panic frequency. The human one. It always surfaced when certainty failed. Aircraft in the air began reporting impossible readings. Navigation systems disagreed with reality. Backup channels activated, then failed in the same careful sequence. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. In the command center, Colonel Thorne watched maps dissolve into nothing. Her hands trembled as she issued orders that couldn't be received. For the first time in her career, she felt truly blind. Inside Cassandra's head, another voice stirred, the one she had buried under regulations and silence. This is what they never saw. Torres stepped closer. "Reeves," he said, sharper now, "you need to stop whatever test you're running." She finally looked at him. Her eyes weren't angry. That unsettled him more. "This isn't a test," she said. "It's a demonstration." "What?" he whispered. She turned the screen so he could see. Network topology maps bloomed outward, showing dependencies spiraling from single points of failure. She highlighted one. "This," she said, "is what happens when everyone assumes someone else understands the system." Lights flickered overhead, then went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the bay in red. Somewhere, an alarm wailed and died mid-note. Torres felt the floor tilt beneath him. "You're bringing down the base." "No," Cassandra said quietly. "I'm revealing it." Her fingers moved again, and this time the base felt it. Air traffic controllers lost weather data. Security gates froze mid-cycle. Command lost satellite uplinks. Even civilian systems began to misbehave, confused by signals that shouldn't exist. Above them, fighters circled with dwindling fuel. Torres grabbed the edge of a desk to steady himself. "People are going to die." She froze. For the first time since the scissors, something like pain crossed her face. Real pain, the kind that wasn't physical. "I know," she said. Her hands trembled, not with fear but restraint. She had crossed the line training warned about, the point where proving a truth risks becoming punishment itself, and she hated that it felt justified. She pulled up another screen, one command, one keystroke. Everything could come back. She didn't press it yet. Instead, she opened a channel few people even knew existed, a buried frequency, one she had memorized long before Whitmore. In General Kellerman's office, the secure terminal lit up again. This time, he didn't hesitate. The voice on the other end was calm, controlled, disappointed. "General," it said, "you are observing the consequences of misunderstanding authority." His throat tightened. "She did this because of me." "Yes," the voice replied, "and because of what you represent." In the bay, Torres watched Cassandra stare at the screen, wrestling something internal and vast. "What happens now?" he asked. She exhaled slowly. "Now," she said, "I decide who pays." She thought of the pilots, the ground crews, the junior airmen who had looked away not out of cruelty but fear. She thought of how power rolled downhill, crushing the quiet ones first. She typed. System stabilized. Radar returned. Comms cleared. Navigation snapped back into place as if nothing had happened. One by one, green indicators bloomed across the base. In the tower, controllers exhaled in unison. In the sky, fighters turned home. Silence followed, not the comfortable kind. The kind that settles when everyone knows they survived something they didn't understand. Cassandra stood up. Torres didn't stop her. She walked out of the bay, hair uneven, spine straight, invisible no longer. Because once someone sees the truth of how fragile control really is, they never mistake humiliation for authority again. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet resolve formed. She would never shrink herself again, not for comfort, not for fear. Some lessons don't need to be loud. They just need to be undeniable. Why did the base feel quieter after everything came back online, like it was holding its breath, afraid to move? Cassandra sensed it as she walked the corridor. The systems were stable again, the lights steady, the familiar hum of Whitmore restored, but the confidence was gone. People moved carefully now, as if the floor itself might give way if they stepped too hard. She could feel eyes on her back, not curiosity, not judgment. Awareness. She had crossed an invisible threshold. For 18 months she had existed below notice. Now she occupied a space people didn't know how to categorize. Not insubordinate, not heroic, just dangerous in a way rank couldn't measure. She reported to medical as ordered. The nurse avoided her eyes while cleaning the cut on her scalp, hands gentle, voice clipped and professional. No questions, no sympathy. Silence was the new protocol. When Cassandra left, her reflection in the stainless steel door caught her attention again. The haircut couldn't be fixed. Not properly. It was a visible record of something that never should have happened. A reminder that humiliation leaves marks long after systems recover. Back in command, General Kellerman sat alone. He hadn't moved in over an hour. The pile of hair on his floor had been cleaned up, but the image remained. Every certainty he had relied on, rank, authority, procedure, had been exposed as incomplete. Colonel Thorne stood across from him now, posture stiff. "She restored everything," she said quietly, "cleanly, no residual damage." "I know," Kellerman replied. "What she demonstrated, sir, it wasn't rebellion, it was capability." That word burned. Capability. He had punished what he didn't understand, and in doing so, he had revealed how thin his control truly was. A secure knock broke the silence. "Enter." Two civilians stepped in. No uniforms, no insignia, just eyes that missed nothing. One of them spoke. "General Kellerman, effective immediately, you are relieved of operational command pending investigation." Kellerman didn't argue, he couldn't. "Commander Reeves?" he asked hoarsely. "She's been reassigned," the woman replied, "for her protection and yours." Cassandra packed that evening. No ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet order and a transport schedule that didn't appear on public boards. She folded her uniform carefully, even the one that had been cut, and placed it at the bottom of her bag. As she waited alone near the hangar, Torres approached. He stopped a few feet away, unsure of the rules now. I never knew, he said. You weren't supposed to. He nodded, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. She studied him, not for threat, for sincerity. I know, she said. The transport arrived without spectacle, engines humming low, the kind of aircraft that didn't invite attention. As Cassandra climbed aboard, she looked back once. Whitmore stood quiet in the distance, lights glowing against the dark, a base that had believed itself unbreakable. She didn't feel victory, she felt something heavier. Responsibility. Because power without understanding wasn't strength, and silence, when forced, always came at a cost. As the aircraft lifted, Cassandra closed her eyes. The mission was over, but the lesson would linger in the people who had looked away, in the general who had cut her hair, and in herself. She had learned something too. That resilience isn't loud. It endures. And sometimes it teaches by simply refusing to disappear. You said. 4. ChatGPT said. Why did she feel more exposed now, flying away unseen, than she ever had while hiding in plain sight? The aircraft didn't have windows where passengers sat. That was intentional. Cassandra felt the vibration of ascent through the deck plates, through her boots, into bone. No visual cues, no landmarks, just motion and time. She welcomed it. For the first 30 minutes, no one spoke to her. 2 other passengers sat along the fuselage, both silent, both unreadable. She recognized the posture immediately, not rank, not service, but familiarity with secrecy. People who lived in compartments and didn't ask names. Her scalp still stung beneath the bandage. Every pulse was a reminder, not of pain, but of choice, of the moment restraint had almost slipped into something else. She replayed it all in her head, not as emotion, but as analysis. That was how she survived things like this. She examined each decision the way she examined networks, where it bent, where it broke, where it nearly failed. She had crossed a line, even if it had been provoked, even if it had been justified. And she knew something most people didn't. Power always demanded accounting. The aircraft leveled out. A voice came over the intercom, calm, female, controlled. Commander Reeves, you'll be briefed shortly. Commander. The word still felt foreign in open air. For 18 months she had been Lieutenant Reeves, smaller, duller, safe. That identity had absorbed the dismissals, the quiet disrespect, the way people talked over her like she wasn't there. It had been easier to let that version take the hits. Now there was no buffer. The door at the front of the cabin opened and a woman stepped through. Civilian clothes, military bearing, eyes sharp with intelligence earned, not assumed. Cassandra, she said, sitting across from her. I'm Director Blackwood. I know who you are, Cassandra replied. Blackwood nodded. Then you know why this conversation matters. She slid a tablet across the small table between them. Footage played, system failures, cockpit audio, command center chaos. Then Cassandra's own hands blurred slightly, moving across keys. You demonstrated restraint, Blackwood said. You could have taken it further. Cassandra didn't answer immediately. She watched herself on the screen, calm, controlled, terrifying in her efficiency. I didn't trust myself to stop if I did, she said finally. That earned her a long look. Your conditioning fractured, Blackwood said. Not accusation, observation. Understandably. Cassandra's jaw tightened. He put his hands on me. I know. The words landed heavier than sympathy ever could. For the record, Blackwood continued, what he did was wrong. Criminal even. That investigation is ongoing. But I need to ask you something that has nothing to do with justice. Cassandra met her gaze. When you began the demonstration, Blackwood asked, were you trying to prove a point or punish him? The question cut deeper than the scissors ever had. Cassandra closed her eyes for a moment. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw the pilots circling, the tower scrambling, Tor's fear, the thin edge where clarity nearly became vengeance. "I don't know," she admitted. "At first it was proof, then it felt like relief." Blackwood nodded slowly. "That's the part we can't ignore." The aircraft hummed steadily around them, indifferent to confession. "You've been operating under suppression for too long," Blackwood said. "That level of self-erasure isn't sustainable, especially for someone with your capabilities." "What happens now?" Cassandra asked. Blackwood leaned back. "Now we recalibrate. You're not being punished. You're being protected from others and from yourself." That stung more than Cassandra expected. They landed just before dawn at a place that didn't appear on maps. The air was warmer here, heavier. Cassandra stepped off the aircraft and felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. Relief mixed with grief. The facility was quiet, no salutes, no ranks spoken aloud, just work. Over the next days she was debriefed, thoroughly, painfully, every choice dissected, every hesitation noted, not to condemn but to understand. At night, alone in a sparse room, Cassandra lay awake replaying Kellerman's voice. The certainty, the ease with which he had decided she needed to be diminished to restore his sense of order. She realized then how close she had come to becoming something else entirely. Not a defender, not an asset. A weapon without anchor. That frightened her. On the fourth day, she stood in a simulation chamber, bare walls, no identifiers. A voice asked her to recreate the Whitmore failure. She did. But this time she stopped sooner. The evaluators noticed. "Why there?" one asked. "Because that's where control becomes ego," Cassandra replied. "Anything past that stops being instruction." Silence followed, then approval. Later, Blackwood found her standing outside, watching the horizon bleed into sunrise. "You'll return to operations," she said. "But not alone, no more deep cover, no more erasure." Cassandra absorbed that. It felt heavier, but steadier. "What about Whitmore?" she asked. Blackwood's expression softened. "They'll upgrade systems, rewrite doctrine, some will learn, some won't. And him. He'll have to face the reality that authority without understanding is just fear in uniform." Cassandra looked down at her hands, still steady. "I never wanted to scare them," she said quietly. "I know," Blackwood replied. "You wanted to be seen." That truth settled deep. Weeks later, Cassandra stood in front of a mirror again. Her hair had grown just enough to soften the damage. The scar on her scalp was faint now, but permanent. She didn't hate it. It reminded her that strength didn't come from silence alone. It came from choosing when to speak, and when not to. She turned away from the mirror, ready to step back into a world that now knew she existed. Because some wounds don't weaken you. They teach you where your power truly lives. Why did the mission briefing feel heavier than any punishment she'd ever endured? Like this time, there would be no place to hide. Cassandra sensed it before the doors closed. The room wasn't hostile, it was worse, it was honest. No one pretended not to know who she was. The facility's briefing chamber was small, deliberately so. No elevated seats, no command table, just a circle, equal height, equal distance. That alone told her everything about what was expected now. Director Blackwood stood at the edge, not at the center. Power here didn't need posture. "This operation isn't about heroics," Blackwood said. "It's about trust." The word landed with weight. Cassandra listened as the mission unfolded: foreign airspace, degraded comms, a joint extraction gone wrong months earlier, an allied asset still alive, still hidden, still refusing contact unless one condition was met. "She asked for you," Blackwood said. Cassandra's chest tightened. "She doesn't know me." "She knows of you," Blackwood replied. "What happened at Whitmore traveled quietly. The right people heard it the right way." That unsettled her more than notoriety ever could. The asset was a pilot, female. shot down during a classified reconnaissance run, presumed dead. She had survived by dismantling her own identity, burning rank, shedding insignia, becoming invisible among people who ignored her by default. Cassandra recognized the pattern immediately. "She won't trust extraction," Cassandra said, "not unless it feels like control stays with her." "Exactly," Blackwood replied, "which is why this isn't a snatch and run, it's a conversation." A pause. "You'll go in alone." No backup, no overwatch she could feel, just contingency plans written by people who understood that some situations collapse the moment too many hands touched them. As Cassandra prepped, she felt the familiar tightening in her gut. Not fear, responsibility again, the kind that didn't fade with experience. Before Whitmore, she would have welcomed isolation. Now it felt exposed. The insertion was clean, too clean. Night swallowed the terrain as she moved, each step deliberate, quiet. The village was asleep, or pretending to be. Cassandra didn't blame them. Survival taught people when not to look. She found the signal where it was supposed to be, subtle, almost apologetic. The pilot waited in a collapsed building, hair hacked short, posture guarded, eyes sharp with someone who had learned not to hope too loudly. "You came alone," the woman said. "Yes." "Why?" Cassandra met her gaze. "Because no one listens when you're surrounded by people who think they know better." That earned a flicker of something, recognition maybe. They didn't exchange names. Names were weight. Names could be used. The pilot studied Cassandra's face, then her hair, the uneven growth, the faint scar. "They punished you," she said quietly. "Yes." "For what?" Cassandra didn't answer immediately. She thought of scissors, of systems failing, of the edge she had nearly crossed. "For refusing to be smaller," she said. The pilot exhaled. Good. They sat in silence after that, not awkward, not strained. The kind that happens when two people understand the cost of being visible. Extraction plans were discussed softly. Routes, timing, risks. Cassandra didn't push, didn't rush. She let the pilot lead. Control mattered more than speed. At one point the pilot asked, "Did you scare them?" Cassandra considered the question carefully. "I think they scared themselves." That made the woman smile for the first time. The extraction was delayed by weather, then by movement, then by something worse, doubt. As dawn threatened the horizon, the pilot hesitated. Her hand shook as she reached for her pack. "They'll put me back into a system," she said. "Erase me again." Cassandra felt the familiar pull, the instinct to reassure, to promise protection she couldn't guarantee. She didn't. "They will try," she said honestly. "The difference is you'll know when it's happening." The pilot nodded slowly. They moved at first light. The ambush came fast and clumsy, untrained, desperate. Cassandra reacted without spectacle. No wasted movement, no rage, just presence. The pilot followed, steady despite fear clawing at her. They reached the extraction point breathless but alive. As the aircraft lifted, the pilot finally spoke again. "Why did you stop at Whitmore?" Cassandra closed her eyes as the ground fell away. "Because I didn't want my pain to become someone else's lesson in terror." The pilot absorbed that, then nodded. When they landed, there was no cheering, no cameras, just quiet professionals who knew better than to decorate survival. Later, alone again, Cassandra felt the weight finally shift. She had used her power, not to dominate, not to disappear, but to stabilize something fragile. That mattered. Back at the facility, Blackwood reviewed the mission in silence. Then she looked up. "You didn't escalate when you could have." "I didn't need to," Cassandra replied. Blackwood smiled faintly. "That's growth." Cassandra didn't feel triumphant. She felt aligned, like the fracture inside her had begun to knit, not erased, not forgotten, but integrated. That night she slept without replaying scissors or screens or voices. For the first time in a long while, her strength didn't feel like something she had to hold back. It felt like something she could aim. Because redemption doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, when restraint finally feels like choice, not survival. Why did the quiet feel different this time? Like it wasn't waiting to be broken, but finally letting her rest. Cassandra noticed it in the smallest things, the way she breathed without measuring it, the way her hands rested open, no longer hovering near some invisible edge. Silence used to feel like pressure, like a test she had to pass by disappearing into it. Now it felt earned. The facility moved around her with the same calm efficiency it always had, but her place within it had shifted. People didn't defer. They didn't avert their eyes either. They spoke to her directly, asked questions, listened to the answers. Being seen, she realized, wasn't the same as being exposed. Weeks passed, then months. Missions came and went, some hers, some not. She advised more than she deployed now, not because she was less capable, but because her value had expanded beyond execution. She had become someone who noticed the quiet failures before they turned catastrophic. The human ones. The moments where pressure bent people just enough to change them forever. One evening, Director Blackwood joined her in the observation corridor overlooking the range. Trainees moved below, silhouettes against floodlights, repeating drills until muscle memory replaced doubt. "You ever miss it?" Blackwood asked. "The anonymity." Cassandra considered the question longer than expected. "Sometimes," she said. "It was simpler when no one expected anything from me. And now I expect something from myself." Blackwood nodded, satisfied. "That's harder to escape." Cassandra watched a trainee freeze mid-drill, overwhelmed. An instructor corrected sharply, too sharply. Cassandra felt the familiar twinge, the memory of scissors, of power used to shrink instead of shape. She didn't intervene immediately. She waited. The instructor adjusted his tone. The trainee recovered. The moment passed without damage. Progress wasn't loud, but it was there. Later that night, Cassandra stood alone in her quarters, facing the mirror one last time before lights out. Her hair had grown back unevenly but intentionally now, short, practical, unapologetic. The scar was still visible if you knew where to look. She didn't hide it. She touched it once, not with anger, with acknowledgement. There was a message waiting on her terminal, restricted, old channel. Whitmore Air Force Base. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was brief, no signature. Systems overhaul complete. Doctrine revised. Command protocols updated regarding disciplinary authority. Personnel training mandatory. At the end, a single line stood apart from the rest. Some silences were mistakes. Thank you for breaking one. Cassandra closed the message and sat back, letting the weight of it settle. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Closure. She thought of General Kellerman, not with triumph, but with clarity. He had believed authority was something you enforced downward. He had never learned it was something you carried inward first. She hadn't learned that easily either. A few days later, she was asked to speak, not to an auditorium, to a room no bigger than a classroom, young officers, new operatives, faces still unlined by consequence. She didn't tell them stories of triumph. She didn't dramatize Whitmore. She spoke instead about restraint, about knowing the difference between being ignored and being underestimated, and how dangerous it was to confuse the two. Power, she told them, isn't what you can take away from someone. It's what you choose not to. They listened, really listened. Afterward, one of them approached her. A young woman, nervous, eyes bright with questions she didn't yet know how to ask. "How do you stay whole?" she asked quietly, "in places that try to carve pieces off you?" Cassandra saw herself there months ago, smaller, sharper, hurting. "You don't," she said honestly. "Not completely. You decide which pieces you're willing to lose and which ones you'll defend no matter the cost. The woman nodded, absorbing that truth like a seed. That night Cassandra walked outside alone. The sky stretched wide and indifferent above her, stars scattered without hierarchy or permission. She felt small beneath them, and for once that didn't frighten her. She had learned that resilience wasn't silence. Silence was only useful when it was chosen. She had learned that strength didn't come from proving how much you could endure. It came from knowing when endurance stopped being noble and started becoming erasure. And she had learned something else, something harder. That redemption wasn't about undoing the past. It was about refusing to let it define the future. Somewhere engines roared. Somewhere systems hummed. Somewhere a young operative would remember her words at a moment when shrinking felt easier than standing. Cassandra turned back toward the light, toward the work still waiting. She didn't need applause. She didn't need acknowledgement. Because dignity doesn't beg to be seen. It stands, it chooses, it acts. And sometimes it changes everything without ever raising its voice.